Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Tope Awotona, your host, and with me today is Francis Brero from MadKudu. Together, we want to spend the next 30 minutes sharing tips with you on how you can book more demos and close deals faster. It's our goal to get you out of here in 30 minutes. So what we want to do is spend the first 20 to 25 minutes going through our slides. And then what we want to do with the final 5 to 10 minutes is take your questions. So what we'd like to do is encourage you to enter your questions into the chat window as we go through. That way we can take them at the end. Thank you very much. With that, we'll start by telling you a little bit about our companies. Like I said, I'm Tope Awotona with Calendly, where I'm the founder and the CEO. What Calendly does is we eliminate the back and forth of scheduling meetings. We also automate the meeting workflows after meetings are scheduled for you. So what that means is, rather than trading 4 to 5 emails to get a meeting scheduled, we can help you get that down in one interaction. In addition to that, after the meeting is scheduled, we can help you with your workflows. So whether that is automatically distributing meetings between your reps in an equitable way, or in a way that maximizes connecting with your customer. It could be sending out notifications before your meetings so that your prospects remember to show up and improving your show rates. It could be automatically adding links to your Zoom links to your calendar invitations so that your reps don't have to do that manually. It could also be automatically updating your CRM with lead details as meetings are scheduled. Because as we all know, reps are super busy and they don't always remember to update their CRM. Those are some of the workflows. Those are just some of the workflows that we're able to help with. We've been doing this for over 6 years now, and we have our customers span the range from solo individuals to small teams to large enterprises like Zendesk and Zillow, Marketo, Uber, Shopify. And just to give you an idea of the scale that we're working with, about 3 million people use our platform on a monthly basis. That's Calendly. Francis, would you be able to tell us about MadKudu?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Tope. So I'm Francis Brero, and I'm the co-founder at MadKudu. In MadKudu, we're a predictive lead scoring platform for B2B. And so what we do is we enable marketing teams and sales teams to leverage all the data that's available about their customers and prospects to identify what is the next best action for each of them. And really the idea there is to really be able to leverage all that data to build relevant customer journeys at scale. And like marketing teams from companies like Drift, Envision, or IBM end up using MadKudu because they've come to realize that to be successful, they need to be increasingly relevant in their customer approach, and MadKudu is really what powers that relevance. So I'm really excited to today talk a bit more about how we help Calendly customers surface the calendars in the right places for the right people to make sure that you can build a relevant journey for everyone.
Awesome. Time kills all deals. I remember 15 years ago, my first sales manager would tell me that all the time. Since then, it's been quantified and validated by the likes of the Harvard Business Review, as well as InsideSales.com. Some of the things they found are that the first 5 minutes that after a lead is created are some of the most critical minutes, right? What they found is your chances of connecting with a lead are 100 times better if you're able to connect with them in the first 5 minutes after they submit that lead, as compared to the next 30 minutes. Think about that for a second. So the first 5 minutes are 100 times better than the next 30 minutes. What that shows is the attention span of the modern buyer is very short. What they also found is that the first vendor to engage typically wins a lot better. So up to 35% to 50% of deals are won by the first vendor to engage the buyer in a meaningful sales process. So with those kind of observations and with that knowledge, the strategy is pretty simple. What you want to do is you want to take your best leads and you want to get them to commit to a meeting at the height of their interest, right? So when somebody comes to you and they're interested, you want to make sure that they don't slip away when they're very interested. When we're able to do that, 2 things happen. First, we generate momentum, we generate momentum before their priorities shift and before inaction sets in. What we also do is we get ahead of the competition. So what we want to do today share with you. Having said that, we recognize that different companies are have different levels of automation when it comes to how they identify their best leads and how they engage with those best leads. So what we want to do today is outline the most common phases that we see, the most common challenges we see in each of those phases, and the common recommendations that we've seen our customers implement to improve performance at each phase. We'll start with phase one. In phase one, you probably have some basic automation in place. You have a lead form, and it's probably collecting a lot of great leads for you. But when your customers fill out those lead forms, they have to wait for somebody on the other end to review that. And at this point in your sales automation process, you're still using your gut instincts to really figure out who's a great lead and who's a not so great lead. Also, what we see from phase one customers is that maybe they have a CRM in place or marketing automation platform in place. And what they're doing is they might be using those platforms to automate the responses. But typically in this phase one, because you're still you're still in the basic phases of automation, typically there's no scheduling automation that's happening. So to kind of summarize, in phase one, what we typically see is the lead volume is great, but the lead to qualified opportunity conversion is probably not so great. And what we want to do is offer some tips for how you might be able to improve that lead to qualified opportunity conversion rate. Here's what an improved workflow will look like. So before, when your customers would fill out the lead, a human being would review it and respond back with an email. But in that email, there's no link to schedule a meeting. What you can do in this phase to minimize, to improve that conversion from lead submission to a qualified opportunity is actually insert a link for the customer to schedule in that email. By doing that, you're eliminating the time in which they're sitting waiting to hear back from a rep. You're eliminating that time in which you're spending trading 4 or 5 emails, or maybe making 4 or 5 phone calls to get connected with them. Another improvement we recommend in this phase is using round robin scheduling, right? So what that allows you to do is pull the availability of multiple people and offer that to your customer. And what that does is it maximizes the number of time slots you offer to your customer. By maximizing those time slots, you improve the chances that your customer is going to find a mutually available time to meet in the shortest window. And given some of the observations those studies made, those first 5 minutes are critical in being able to compress that window between the time they show interest and being able to get a meeting on the calendar. That's what we want to be able to do. So in phase one, the goal is to improve your lead to qualification conversion by compressing time and compressing the number of steps and reducing the friction to get a meeting scheduled. Once you've done that, you can move on to phase two. In phase two, there's you probably have some automation in place. So you've implemented some of the recommendations we made in phase one. You've begun sharing scheduling links with your prospects, and they're scheduling there, and you're getting really happy with your lead to qualification conversion rate. If you're in this phase, if you're happy with your lead to qualification conversion, what you might want to consider is actually adding more leads to the top of the funnel, right? So we know that because you're already happy with the conversion that you're seeing here, a valid strategy in this phase might be to add more leads to the process. And how can you do that? You can do that by actually eliminating the previous step in phase one, in which a human being had to sit down and review the submission before you got back to them. What we typically see customers do in this phase is at the time of lead submission, they actually redirect the prospect, the lead, to schedule a time while their interest is high. And again, in this phase, we're recommending that you use round robin if you have a sales team, again, to maximize the number of time slots that are offered to the prospects so that the chances of finding the time is greatly increased. The other types of companies that may want to consider the strategy in this phase are companies that have high traffic to their websites, but you're seeing a low conversion rate from visitor to lead submission. So if you're in the phase in which either because you have high traffic and the conversion to leads is very low, you might want to think about opening up the funnel a little bit more by allowing customers and potential prospects to book at the height of their interest. This strategy is also really valuable if you have a high ACV for your product. So that kind of caps up, that kind of summarizes phase 2. I'll pass it on to Francis to talk about phase 3. Oh, sorry, before I do that, here's actually an example of a customer who was in phase 2, and what they were able to do is, just like we said, they were happy with their conversion from a lead submission to qualified opportunity, but given that they were there, they were happy with the conversion, but what they found was they could actually use more leads at the top of the funnel. And by opening up that funnel, what they were able to do is actually double the number of scheduled demos that they were able to schedule. And they saw the effects of this cascade throughout the different stages in their sales process. And they were able to implement this in a time frame of about 2 weeks. Francis?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a ton, Tope. So I think, now that we're kind of jumping into the phase 3, which is the full-on end-to-end automation, one of the things that we often end up seeing is that you want to be able to offer some white glove or VIP kind of onboarding to your most qualified leads. And so the idea really is to be able to start creating these differentiated paths and differentiated journeys based on who your different leads are, to make sure that you're sending the right ones to your Calendly landing page and the other ones to your nurture campaigns, and essentially the other ones to your webinars. And generally the challenge is that once you start getting to a high volume of traffic and a high volume of lead generation, you end up having a traffic that's very heterogeneous. And what that means is that not all leads are of the same quality, and very often you're going to have some leads where the value of that lead is actually lower than the cost of having a conversation with them. So essentially, if you start opening up the calendar and you start having those people book times on your calendar, it can actually be detrimental to the overall efficiency of the funnel. And that's where it starts becoming interesting to put in and layer in another step into the workflow, which is really going to be that second step of saying, post form fill, you want to have some form of qualification mechanism where you decide where you want to route the lead. And so essentially what we're saying now is, having a tool to say, this lead is filling in a form. I now think it's someone that's qualified, therefore let's push it on to a Calendly page, or if they're not qualified, let's push them into our nurture funnel so that we can keep on nurturing them, but not necessarily have them talk to a rep, because otherwise there's a risk that we might be wasting some time. And that makes a lot of sense from a volume standpoint, because when you think of it, probably about 90% of the traffic on the website is going to be relatively low quality, and that generally translates to about 80 or 70% of the form fills that are going to be of lower quality. And so being able to filter early on is a pretty important thing to be able to do. And so jumping into how you can tactically build this, because I think part of the goal here is to show some of the tools that are out there that can help you actually build these workflows and orchestrate all of this. One of the tools I wanted to highlight is a company called Instapage. And so they build landing pages. And one of the really cool features that they have is you can essentially dynamically change the redirect post form submit based on values that are picked in the dropdown. And so in the example that we're seeing on the GIF here, we're saying that if the lead is picking a company size that's big enough, then we can redirect them directly to a Calendly page. So essentially we go back to this concept of saying we don't want to push everyone to the Calendly page, but in this case we want to say if someone is self-identifying as a relatively large company, then we want to give them the opportunity to book some time on the calendar. And that's one of the really cool functionalities that a tool like Instapage can enable. And so maybe just summarizing this first kind of instrumentation. So the two tools that we talked about, our Instapage, Calendly in there. The major pros of doing this is that it's very easy to implement. It's very transparent because you know directly what has led someone to see a Calendly page versus not. But then on the flip side, the main issue is that you could have some missed opportunities because not everyone is going to fill in the right information on the drop-down form, and then you can have some potential false positives. And so that kind of leads us into the next phase, which is really where MadKudu shines, and that's really in the predictive qualification, where now what we're going to be able to do is to say, well, if we know what your ideal customer looks like, whenever someone is going to populate one of the forms with their email address, we're going to compare that to your ideal customer and determine, are they close enough to our ideal customer profile? And if they are, then we want to give them access dynamically to a Calendly page. And so this is an example of something that a great company called Chartio has implemented with MadKudu, where essentially on their demo form, the email is input, MadKudu runs the scoring based on that email, and if the email is considered to be qualified, post form submit, we essentially route them to a Calendly page where they can book a meeting directly with the rep. And so, we're seeing like amazing results there, and like the 60% increase in pipeline created from those forms, and at the same time, we're not impacting the performance of the reps. And so, really, the good thing about that setup is now we're doing like really high performance and increased efficiency for the team. The only downside here is that it requires a relatively significant existing customer base to be able to configure this predictive model that is then going to be doing this dynamic routing. And so maybe the last element that I wanted to show in terms of instrumentations is really going beyond the idea of form fills and going into something that's a little bit more organic and something that I think is very trendy today, where we're looking at a lot of, like chat bots and live chats. And one of the cool things that has been implemented with Intercom, MadKudu, and Calendly is that if someone comes to the website, again, we can ask for their email in Intercom. Based on that email, MadKudu can run the qualification, and if the lead is qualified, we can then show the Calendly app directly in the chat. So what we're seeing here on the GIF in a second, this person directly on our website is able to get access to a Calendly page and be able to book a demo directly from the live chat. And so what becomes really interesting by doing this is that we're now increasing the number of touch points and the number of places where your qualified leads are able to get in touch with a rep. And so, yeah, I think ultimately like the goal and the idea behind this is to really start thinking of creating these fast lanes and creating like a fast and a slow lane, the fast lane for your quality leads so that they really get swiftly in front of your reps. And I think like, yeah, one of our customers put it best when we implemented this full setup was for them, ultimately the goal for them is more meetings because that equates to more pipeline, which down the road is going to equate to more money. And so maybe to conclude on all of this before we open it up for the Q&A, I think really we've been talking about the fact that time is a deal killer, but I think ultimately at an even higher level, what we're really trying to accomplish, both Calendly and MadKudu, fundamentally is helping companies orchestrate relevant customer journeys so that your highest quality leads and the leads that you care the most about are able to be, talking to reps as soon as possible, because that's where the reps can add the most value, and that's how you create a really frictionless and enjoyable sales process for your customers. And so it doesn't necessarily matter how advanced you are, and if you want to go directly with the predictive analytics versus something like an Insta page where it's more rule-based. But I think overall it's all about just orchestrating your buyer journey in a way that's really easy for the customer, and constantly taking that approach of thinking, how can I make it easy for the right leads to talk to my reps? And those small little details of showing that you've gone the extra mile of making it easy for them is going to pay massive dividends by the end. Tope, I think you're muted.
Thank you very much. So we will now open it up to questions. If you give us just 1 second to pull up the questions. Okay, so there's a, so first question, is there, will we be able to listen to the recording later? The answer to that is yes, we will be sharing the link to the recording in our follow-ups with everybody. We have a question from somebody. They want to know, how do the emails get qualified? Also, what do you mean by having a large customer base for the model?
Yeah, so when we say the way the email gets qualified, so based on the email address, our system is then going to look up information as to what is the company size, what is the industry, what kind of technologies they have, and then essentially do a kind of lookalike scoring with your customer base to say, if we look at your customer base, is there anyone that looks very similar to this lead? And if yes, then there is a high chance that they're a qualified lead. And then in terms of what we meant by the volume, as we said, it's about, if you have about 100 customers, then we can build a machine learning model on top of that that really differentiates a good customer versus just a lead that's not going to be a great fit.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question about lead qualification in the chat. Sorry, the questions keep jumping around. So there's a question about the leads in the chat. They want to know, is it, how's that done? Like, what are the tools required for that, and what are the different components required for that, and how is that logic generally?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways of doing it. In the example that we showed, the 3 tools that are used are Intercom, MadKudu, and Calendly. Intercom is kind of the base platform, so that's the chat platform. Then there's one feature of that which is called the operator bot, and that's the part, the chat bot that's going to ask for the email address. Once the email address is input, then you need to have the MadKudu integration turned on. MadKudu is going to run its scoring based on that email address, and then you need the Calendly app to be installed in Intercom, and MadKudu will then trigger the Calendly app to be displayed so that the calendar shows up in there. That's one way of doing it. Drift has a very similar setup. Yeah, we'll be happy to share some more information on that in the follow-up.
Very good. Another question is about the how you estimate the value of the leads. So the question is this: can MadKudu come up with estimates of value of particular steps in the sales process, and how do they vary? I think the question is, can you quantify the value of getting a prospect from, of moving people through the sales process at each stage?
So that's not exactly what, so what we do is really at the very early start of the sales cycle. So we do have, like the prediction does increase in confidence as you get more information about the lead and as it moves down the funnel. But really the idea of the scoring here is to say, as soon as an email is captured to very top of funnel, what is the predicted value of that lead in terms of what is its probability to close and what is its kind of predicted deal size, essentially.
Thank you. There's a question out there about when will Calendly offer a date time view that will eliminate an extra click between clicking on a date and then selecting a time? That is a very, very popular Calendly request, and I'm happy to announce that we actually have that live. So we've been gradually rolling that out in the past few days. So you may or may not have it. If you do not have it, we can send you instructions on how to get access to that earlier. There are also a number of technical questions about how do we integrate this with our website. We will be taking those just because we'll be probably taking those in the follow-up emails that we'll be sending out to everybody afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll take all the questions that are in the chat and we'll publish kind of an FAQ as a follow-up with all those questions and the answers, so that you'll get a chance to see those answers and continue the conversation based on what you see in there.
Thank you very much, Francis. We will be following up with everybody, as Francis mentioned. Thanks for your time.
All right, yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Tope.